Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As everybody is coming in, we urge you to pick a language. If you're an English speaker, please choose English by going down to interpretation and clicking on English. For those of you who are Spanish speakers, and Korean speakers, you know what to do. Please do that. We're about to go live on Facebook. So as soon as we go live, we will share it and then we will get started, everybody. And I see our final speakers here. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome, Facebook people. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to go live on my own little personal channel. Wait, I don't want to hear myself. There we go. I'm sharing it on my little thing. There we go. Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to SDP Connect, the last SDP Connect of 2021. Honestly, when we came up with this idea to do SDP Connect during the pandemic, in July of 2020, we thought it was a stopgap measure for a few months while things were going to get better. And then we'd be meeting in person like we had been for so long. And now we are at the end of 2021. I think we've done probably about 45 of these meetings, maybe more. And you can find all of them on our Interchange website. Go to theinterchange.org, click on self-determination, and you will find all of the recordings we've ever had on the self-determination program on SDP Connect. But we really are in this place now where we are still all meeting virtually and not in person. So I just, as the organization that has been advocating for access to vaccines and vaccine mandates since and providing education for people on COVID since March 15th of 2020, I want to just take a minute and urge all of you to make sure that you are fully vaccinated. And that means including a booster. Study just came out today. Dr. Fauci spoke at a press conference today saying that the new variant, the Omicron variant, is taking hold. It's doubling every 2 days, doubling every 2 days. I want you guys to get your head around that. It will be the dominant variant by February in the United States. And the 2 vaccines do not work well enough for to fight off that variant. So I'm hoping that all of you will go out and get your booster if you haven't done so yet. I am at 2.5 months since I had my booster, so I feel good about it. If they tell me I need another one, I'll go get another one too. I just don't want to get sick, and I don't want to make other people sick who may be vulnerable, particularly people with developmental disabilities who have a 7 times likelier to be hospitalized and 10 times more likely to die. So please protect our community by going out, getting vaccinated, and getting boosted. So now that I'm off my little soapbox about vaccinations, I am so excited about this SDP Connect. I am more excited about this SDP Connect than I have been ever because I'm not in charge of it and I don't have to speak at it, which makes me so incredibly happy. We today have my dear friend, Tim Jin, who I have known for many years, who is a co-founder of Disability Voices United. He was there sitting around a living room in 2017 when we came up with the idea and the name of Disability Voices United, where our #1 priority was the self-determination program. And it took Tim a little while to get into the self-determination program because first of all, he wasn't eligible. And then when he finally got selected, the COVID hit and it became really a barrier. He has been in the program since November 1st. I am part of his circle of support, so I have seen how much it has changed his life. And I asked him to come with his team to talk about how how it has changed his life. So I'm going to hand it over to Tim. Oh, just real quickly for everybody, you've all been muted with the exception of the presenters. We do that intentionally because we are interpreting this meeting in both Spanish and Korean. And so we want to make sure that the interpreters can hear our voices very clearly. You will get a chance to ask Tim and his team questions after his presentation. You will be able to do that either through the chat, and Ed, as usual, will monitor the chat. You can also do it through using your raise hand feature, and I will call on you after all the presentations are over. So I'm gonna now hand it over to Tim Jin and let him take it away. Thanks for joining us, Tim.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to SDP Connect. My name is Tim, and I'm going to be the guest host tonight. Judy is taking a break and relaxing for once. But if you hear my iPad beeping with notifications, that is our tireless leader checking up on us. This is why I have no screen time when I'm sleeping. My cousin Judy can wait after I get a glass of milk in the morning, but I never make her wait after lunchtime, no matter how hungry I get. I would like to take you all on a journey on how I was able to start my self-determination. I would like to introduce some of my fabulous team. Sunny Charnish is the same tenacity as Judy. She never gives up and goes beyond her office hours. Her counterpart, Deborah Jorgensen, is tough as nails, but she also gives you a lot of work to follow through. When Deborah first met me, she couldn't believe that I wasn't already in self-determination. Victor Lira is the secret sauce in a hamburger, making sure you can have a perfect amount of mustard in every bite. I really don't like ketchup at all. Kendra Oliver has always been my voice of reason. I learned a lot from her management style. Sunny, Deborah, Victor, and Kendra, would you like to introduce yourself and how you are a part of my team?
Hello. Hi, everyone. I guess I'll go first. I'm Sunny Charnas with Guidelight Group, and Deborah and I have the honor of being Tim's independent facilitators. And that for us includes person-centered planner. I know some people separate those, but we don't. So we have had the honor and the challenge and the fun of helping Tim to transition into self-determination and to manage his program while he's in self-determination. And I have a slide with our contact info, Tim, but I don't know if now is the right time to show it. Maybe we could put it in the chat. Okay, we'll put our contact information in the chat. And we're happy to be here. Deborah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Deborah. I'm with Guidelight Group also. I actually met Sunny when I took her IF training course back in 2020 and was, kind of gearing up to go the independent facilitator route because I just found it just fascinating and an amazing type of experience you can have to actually help a client in a very holistic way. So then COVID hit, and then took a little break to homeschool my kids, and then came back and started working for Sunny. So I've been with Guidelight Group for a little over a year now. I've had about 15 clients in the IF role, and clients kind of all over the span from preparing to go into SDP and trying to make those adjustments, and the actual, transitioning into SDP and the person-centered planning. And then as well, I have several clients who were already in their first year and then transitioning them into their second year now. So I've got kind of a range of clients, and I've worked with like 8 different regional centers. So anyway, it's just a pleasure to be part of Tim's team. And this was a really unique and powerful experience for me as well. So I'm just happy to be here, Tim.
Hi there, Victor Lera with Aviana Healthcare Services. Met Tim, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, between his speaking, his conferences, and then kind of hanging out sometimes at lunch, and then, and talking to Judy, and just kind of became a friend. And, I'm proud and honored to be able to provide him his FMS services. It's one of the services that we provide. And the self-determination program is kind of personal for me in general, just because, I've been working on it with the state stakeholder group since early 2014, along with Judy and lots of other awesome advocates and providers and, people. So to see Tim be able to start it is kind of special, to be honest. And the way that he goes about it is about the most perfect way you could possibly do it. He takes responsibility for all of his staff, his people. He organizes it. He is investing in other technology for himself to make it easier for himself to manage his life and do what he wants to do on his terms. And it's a beautiful thing. So I was talking to him earlier today, and I told him, if I could just hold him up as the role model for self-determination to inspire other people to know what that they can do and achieve, and the kind of impact that they can make, then that would be great. So I really appreciate it. So thank you, Tim.
Hi, my name is Kendra Oliver, and I am first and foremost a friend of Tim's. Like Victor, I met Tim maybe 3.5 years ago. We spoke at a conference together on a similar panel, and have been friends and connected ever since. Background wise, I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've also worked in the field of developmental disabilities for over 15 years in the capacity of working for a supported living agency and overseeing services for supported living. But my role in this process was really just to be a friend and to be supportive in putting together the most robust and perfect services that Tim wanted. And so being able to sort of bring different perspectives to think about when entering into self-determination. And so, I really just wanted to be of support to Tim in whatever resource that I could offer.
Thank you so much for being a part of my team. I feel like I will be treating all of you to a lot of lunches and dinners. Just as long as we eat somewhere good, you know me. I'm always hungry. Now, I would like to talk about how I chose my independent facilitators and why it is important to interview several before deciding who to go with. I had a self-determination coach to help me get the process started. She highly recommended that I work with an independent facilitator, but like the Korean blood flowing through my veins and the steam coming out of my hands and feet from stubbornness, I didn't listen to her at first. I've done many orientations throughout the state, and the 5 principles of self-determination have become second nature to me. I thought, how hard is it going to be without an independent facilitator? Piece of cake, right? I could always ask my friends to help me through the process. I was very wrong. I quickly made the compromise with my coach when she asked me about getting my budget from my service coordinator and asking what are my unmet needs and getting a certified budget and hiring staff. All of a sudden, I saw my 32-inch monitor that I used for Zoom shrinking into a Casio watch. It was very overwhelming, and then I decided to meet with several independent facilitators before choosing the right ones. I probably met with 3 to 5 independent facilitators before meeting with Sunny. Sunny, do you remember one of the first things that you asked me? You also assumed that I was already in the program. I'll Talk No Action is not my theme song anymore. Maybe Sunny and Deborah can explain this better. but I wanted the best independent facilitator that can adapt to me. Since I have no natural support in the program, I wanted my facilitators to feel comfortable enough to push and pull me when needed, but also give me a chance to think things through, figure out my options, and together we can execute a plan. I did not want someone hovering over me and telling me what to do and always agreeing with me. Finding the right facilitator was my top priority because I use a lot of humor as I talk. But when it comes to building relationships with my team, I always cross my T's, dot my I's, and zigzag my M's. I zigzag a lot. I'm pretty certain that my entire team needed to purchase more server space because of my thousands of late-night emails of new ideas. Many of you have seen my training video from my first person-centered plan in 2018. That was a great plan with a totally different group of people. When I had my first plan, it was a general overview about myself. When I met with Sunny and Deborah from Guide Light Group, I wanted to be more specific because I was determined to be in the program this time. Deborah and Sunny, would you like to speak about my two PCPs? I'm getting a bit tired of pressing play over and over. How about letting the audience know how you helped me come up with two unique person-centered plans for my situations?
Sure, I'd love to do that. So when Tim talks about like he knew what he wanted and he needed an independent facilitator who could like meet him where he was at. And so that was what we did. We just tried to listen, tried to understand what he understood and what he knew and how he wanted it to go, and then adapt how we would kind of maybe normally do things. But nothing is normal in SDP. Like every single client is different and they have different needs and a different way of wanting to do things. So at first, Tim kind of said, well, I really don't even want a PCP. I don't want a bunch of people sitting around like telling me how great I am. Like I did that a couple of years ago and I don't need that, right? And he said, I just want to manage my own staff and, convert from the agency to SDP. And that's all I want to do. So we had to spend a little bit of time kind of talking about like what was important to him, what were some of the things he thought he might want to spend the SDP money on, because if you want to spend the money, in SDP, you also have to link it to your person-centered plan. So we actually expanded. So we ended up kind of going back and forth. We did a lot of kind of written questions to Tim, and then he would write back, and then we would have a meeting to kind of talk through it. And we identified that the best way to move forward on the actual person-centered planning was to set up like 2 mini meetings. So one was on just staffing and like how to manage his own staff. And the other one was on his move to self-employment and starting his own business. So he came up with a pretty large circle of support for each meeting. And he knew the people to go to. He wanted a variety of perspectives. And we really just we kept them short. We kept them to about like an hour and 15 minutes. And we did a lot of like proposing questions and letting people give ideas and just brainstorm and just think outside the box. And that was kind of the live parts of the meetings. And then we took all of those notes and really Tim kind of culled through it and figured out, okay, what are the pieces I really like? what can I actually tackle in year one? Because there were so many amazing ideas, like on the employment side. I'm very sorry for my barking dog. On the employment side, there were so many ideas. It's like a 5-year business plan for him. So we had to kind of be judicious. He was careful about like how much do you kind of commit to in the first year, especially because the switch from an SLS agency to managing your own staff, and as many staff as Tim has, was like that's already a major, step and learning curve there. So I don't know if I missed anything, but yeah, Tim, you ended up with 4 goals actually, because there were things you wanted to do, like paid for your gym, so then we had a goal around like, physical and emotional and well-being and that kind of thing. And then you had kind of like a self-improvement goal as well that we had identified through the process. So we kind of used the actual live meetings to pull ideas for the person-centered plan and the actual action steps, and then came out with a pretty, I think, reasonable plan, and a good plan that is, I think Tim is happy with now. So is there anything I missed, Tim, that you want me to talk about? No? Okay.
Sunny and Deborah, we really challenged ourselves in developing these 2 plans. Thank you for the combo PCPs. It was supersized enough where it became reality. I've been in the traditional system for a very long time. When you were a child, you didn't really ask why Thursday night was meatloaf night, but you just finished your plate because it was meatloaf night, even though you couldn't stand it. I felt this way for pretty much all of my life in the traditional system. My parents didn't really advocate for me when it came to the regional center at my yearly PP meeting, because they just provided everything that I needed. At the time when I was living with my mom and dad, they chose to not use respite hours when they needed to find someone to help me. Even when I moved out from my parents and had SLS services, not one agency asked me what they could do better. Everyone just assumed that I was doing fine. I did not know that I was being underserved by the traditional system until I started my SDP. Kendra, since you used to work for an agency as an director, would you mind your perspective from the traditional versus self-determination and how it is different, where most clients may not realize that they are being underserved?
Sure. I think that's a really good question. And there's a lot of differences between traditional services that are offered versus self-determination. So with traditional services, as many of you know, there are services that are being offered to be provided to you. And I sort of think about it like a box. So there's a package that's being offered with various services that may or may not meet your needs. With traditional services, most agencies should come with their own set of philosophies, a mission, vision, and values about what they think is best for you and the services that are being rendered. And so I always encourage people, if you're going the traditional service route, please be diligent in making sure that the agency's vision aligns with your personal vision and values. But when you think about self-determination, it is your vision, your values, your desires that are leading the services that are being provided to you. So you don't have to think about it as like a box that you're having to fit in. You're creating the space and the services that you want for yourself. So the oyster is yours, the world is yours in terms of self-determination, because you really are creating services that are the exact perfect fit for you. And so just comparing a couple of things, like agencies have policies and procedures, and they are developed to meet the agency's needs. They're not necessarily established to meet the individuals who they're serving and their needs. Now, if you decide to go into self-determination, you're going to want to establish some policies and procedures, but you're going to cater them around what's best for you. And so I think that's a really, difference between going with an agency and being your own creator of services. Agencies often have a lot of paperwork that they have to complete. So staff have to complete paperwork. There's contractual obligations. And while there's some paperwork that may have to be done, it's not anything like what the agencies require. You're creating what paperwork has to be done. Obviously, staff need timesheets and there's certain sort of laws that we have to follow in self-determination, but the requirements specific to the types of documentation that staff are required to do, that's something in self-determination that you get to create. So if you are uncomfortable with someone, sort of documenting about what you do day in and day out, that's not something that has to be present in self-determination. I think the other thing that is really key, and just in terms of difference, is, when you're working with an agency, there are other people who have a say. In self-determination, you have the last say. And I think that's so empowering because oftentimes, there may be other people who have opinions and who are influential, but in self-determination, you're where the buck stops. And while agencies may say, you're guiding your services, there is a level of say that they have that is different than when you're in self-determination. I think in terms of being underserved, as Tim was mentioning, is, when you're operating within a system, even when you're comfortable in that system, you may not realize that there's limits that are placed upon you because that's just the only way that you know. And so there may be certain times where you want to do something. And I give this example of I'd love to take a trip, a drive up north. And the agency may have a policy that staff can't travel outside of the county without having the supervisor and the supervisor approve it. It's not that they don't want you to do it, but there's lots of layers that you have to go through to get approval just to take a drive or just to take a trip. And so in self-determination, all that red tape is just cut through. If you want to go take a drive, you want to take a trip, you're making those calls. And so there's a level of freedom and power that comes in self-determination that really just isn't as present utilizing the traditional services. Again, I just think that, there's power in your ability to make choices in self-determination. There's no limits in terms of what you do. You're the one who's setting the policies. So I think that's another kind of key thing is that you get to establish the rules and the guidelines that your staff have to follow. You don't have to follow an agency's rules and guidelines. And I feel like the power in that is so, it's just you don't realize, I think sometimes you don't realize how, maybe controlled or the lack of choice you have until that is removed. And I think Tim can speak best to that in terms of his personal experience, but that's, having worked in a traditional system and I'm not saying it doesn't work for some people, it does. For other people, it doesn't. I think it's an individual sort of choice that you need to make, how much control over your services you want, how much involvement you want in staffing. And it's really a personal choice about what's the best fit for you.
Thank you for your perspective. I'm going to be very honest with all of you tonight, and if you switch the last two letters in my name, it spells T-M-I. I'm always open and honest with everyone. When I started thinking about my unmet needs and developing my budget, it was a wake-up call for me because if I wasn't going through the process of starting the program, I would probably be in the same situation in the traditional system. I realized that under all agencies, I was being almost neglected by not having enough staffing hours from my budget. I had many accidents during the day by urinating on myself because I had no control of scheduling people to help me. I missed numerous lunchtime meals also in college because the agencies couldn't find reliable people to help me. Also, since the pandemic started, I haven't found employment. Instead of trying to get my old job back, I want to do something different and become a professional speaker. I want to ask Sunny and Deborah this question. When the team helped me discover how underserved I was for 20 years being in SLS, how did you help me to come up with my budget? What were your thoughts when you were helping me with my plan?
Okay, so it's Deborah again. So I'll start. Tim, when you told the story about how you used to have to wait when you were working like full time before the pandemic, you'd have to wait all day to go to the bathroom and, you know, basically just be counting the seconds till you could get home so that, you know, you could have that experience with like staff because nobody came during the day to help you. That just, I mean, that's just so, it's so wrong on so many levels. I mean, I just like, that just personally was so hard to hear. And it was clear that you were underserved in the traditional system. So I guess turning to the budget negotiations, you want me to talk a little bit about that. One of the things about the supported living service budgets is that they're often given to you in like a monthly number. It's just a big number. And you have to figure out what that number means and where it came from. And that is quite a task for a lot of regional centers, not just, you know, Tim's regional center. So one of the things we spent quite a few weeks going in circles trying to figure out how the agency was actually providing 24/7 staffing, but they weren't using IHSS. And so it was like, we finally kind of understood that the agency was eating that cost. But in terms of, you know, so there was advocacy around getting those hours added back into the budget that the SLS agency at the time was getting. And actually the, you know, Tim's contact at that agency led to them doing that advocacy and making sure with the regional center that they were getting adequately reimbursed for all the hours that they were providing for Tim. So that was like a huge difference in what we started with compared to what you ended up with in the budget. The other, you know, area of unmet need was around employment. So we did negotiate with the regional center to add like a tailored day service program to allow for his work around his self-employment goals. And then the last piece of it was making sure that since Tim has about 221 hours of IHSS, but had been unable to find a provider, he was able to, you know, the regional center in the traditional system was like picking up those costs over time. So we had to make sure that moving forward, they would agree to, you know, as if he was in the traditional system, that they would put forward funding until he could find an IHSS provider, which he's, you know, worked really hard on and was able to do. And then we'll now have to go back and renegotiate that budget amount based on the amount that Tim, you know, ended up not having to use because he found an IHSS provider. So anyway, it's complicated. I mean, it's just really complicated. And when you add in, I think the SDP participants who have 24/7 staffing through an SLS, you know, it's really not an easy budget discussion or process, but we got through it. So lots of advocacy, and Judy helped as well. And you know, we just kind of, you know, stuck to our guns in terms of like defining what the unmet need was and making sure that rates were up to date and carried forward for the full year one. So is there anything else, Sunny or Tim, that you want to talk about in the budget?
I think you covered it, Deborah. Tim, did you have anything else?
Now for the fun part, Let's talk about my spending plan. Unless you are a financial advisor or a CPA, trying to come up with a spending plan on my own was nearly impossible. A few years ago, my friend and I were trying to come up with a rough draft on a very broken spreadsheet with a spending plan. It's a really good thing that we didn't use those same formulas, because if I did, my budget would be way off and be in the danger zone, and definitely in the wrong place. Creating my spending plan took a small task force from my team because there were many moving pieces. For example, how much I wanted to pay for my staff members with the different pay rates and taxes. We needed to calculate overtime, holiday pay, and emergency pay. Also, we needed to factor in my unmet needs. Even after we received the certified budget, there were many hours through email and on Zoom, trying to complete the spending plan. Sunny and Deborah, I never mentioned this to you, but when you sent me the final draft of the spending plan, I clearly remember where I was. I was in the pit at a Rancid concert, trying to look at the spreadsheet, and my friends were trying to get my attention, circling around me. I'm always zigzagging like my yams. It took quite a bit of work and multiple people that are a lot smarter than myself to finalize the spending plan. Once again, I'd like to introduce Victor and Kendra. They are responsible for helping me with staffing. They both encourage me to interview people way before my start date, making sure they get their background checks completed, making sure that I interview multiple people before choosing my staff members, and more importantly, hiring a lead staff that will help me manage my other staff, scheduling, and also finding coverage for backup. Kendra, would you like to start first? How did we come up with the job descriptions and also the offer letter for my team?
Sure. Thanks, Tim. I think just in terms of the job description, one of the things that we needed to consider is thinking about what Tim wanted or what you want if you're creating your own job description in terms of the person who's going to be working or providing services to you. And so, I asked him a series of questions like, can you think of who would be your ideal staff? Like, are there examples of people who you found that were really good fits, who used to work with you? Are there characteristics and qualities of really good friends that you have that you think, gosh, if I could have this person around all the time, I'd love to have that. And then think about like pie in the sky, like, Tim is a foodie. So having someone who cooks is important. I like to think in terms of a team as like a diverse group of people. So you don't have to bring everybody in with the same set of skills. So you may have one person who's a really good cook, and then you could have another person who's, your fun person, who's very reliable. And so when thinking about building a team, it's, thinking about all these qualities of individuals that you would want to be in your circle, providing supports to you. And so drilling that down into a job description, we began to sort of start with like, what would your like dream team look like? And then we drilled that down into very specific expectations. And what was nice about this is that it was really like, what does Tim want? And so again, when you're thinking about it, you get to create the rules. So you get to create whatever the expectations you want for your employees when you're writing their job descriptions. One thing that I like to remind people is sometimes common sense is not that common. And so what I mean by that is also writing down things that you're like, well, obviously anyone who's coming to work with me knows that they need to come on time. Well, not everybody necessarily comes on time. So if being on time is something that's important to you, then that needs to be in the job description and being very explicit about that. Because setting up these expectations for people who you want to come and work for you is really, really key. I always think about, like, when you're entering into an employment relationship, is that it is a relationship and you want to make sure that it's a good fit. And so in any relationship, it's like being able to put those expectations out first. So having a really detailed and thorough job description that makes sure that it's meeting your needs. And that's sort of how we tackled it. We looked at sort of, what would be the best staff, what are sort of the basic qualifications you would want someone to have, and then everything in between. And we sort of filled that in. And we took the same approach with the offer letter as well, wanting to make sure we were clear about, like, the salary that was being offered, the benefits that were being offered. Why would it be, beneficial for someone to come and work for Tim? So in creating that contractual agreement, we wanted to include all of those details to sort of make sure that someone who's agreeing to work for Tim was clear about what the expectations of the job were coming in. And that's really how we approach the process, sort of pulling away from more of the traditional way of, like, it has to look like this format or have certain check boxes. It was really more about Tim and what was going to meet his needs, and being clear about bringing someone in so that they knew what the expectation was.
Yeah.
You and I
That-
worked extremely closely over the years. We probably went through multiple ideas on staffing, but you helped me come up with a plan that fit my current situation. Would you briefly describe what we came up with, like having a main staff and also backup staff?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of what's great is, Tim was approaching everything in a methodic way. And this is where I put the plug in for IFs, by the way. We don't do independent facilitation. I don't have a dog in the fight, but I tell everybody, all the presentations that I do anytime and every time, that good IFs are worth their weight in gold. Because it may seem like a daunting task to sort of think about all the, oh my God, all these things, and there's complex pieces to it, and then the spending plan and the PCP and the thing. Yeah, there's lots of pieces and things that you have to do to be able to accomplish this, and then to start, successfully launch into your SDP. But you're not on an island, you're not alone. There are people to help you with that, and that can help you with that. So, Tim got great IFs, and that really, I think, was the key to his success, to be honest. To be able to coordinate everything and bring everybody together and make sure that we're all on the same page, and then methodically go through step by step. Okay, what do we got to do to get everything in place to be able to get everything going? So I'm glad that his stubbornness wore off and that he decided to go ahead and get an IF and then reach out for some resources. So I appreciate that. But with the foundation, like what Kendra was saying, and getting that in place, and for the record, that spending plan 2 years ago wasn't that bad. I'm just saying, just for the record. When he came to us as the FMS and he said, hey, I want you to help me with my spending plan now, he already had a solid foundation and an idea of what kind of where he wanted to be and what he wanted to do. So we spent a couple of hours in a conference room with a giant whiteboard, and basically between with himself and his lead staff at the time, we went through and mapped out sort of all the different permutations and things that we could do to be able to meet his needs, and then he already had an idea of, okay, IHSS hours, how are we going to plug them in? Where do we need to use them? How do we best essentially, take advantage of the budget and the staff that he has and that he knows that he needs to get in order to meet his needs on his terms, in his way. So within all of this, again, kind of coming back to what's been already said a few times throughout, all the conversations tonight, Tim is the boss. Throughout all of these steps, it's like, what do you think, Tim? Does this work for you? And then he would give input, or we'd, put something together, and then we'd say, what do you think? Does that work for you? He'd say no, or no, we know what? No, I know this person needs to take those hours. We'll shift this person in that place. I'm like, okay, great. Keep mapping it out until we had a pretty solid outline of his staffing and how he was going to do it. And then on top of that, building in, like he said, emergency incentive pay, backup hours, holidays, and really he was thinking it through, all the way through, so that way he would have the coverage that he need and not have to worry about when he needed to go to the bathroom anymore, not have to worry about if he wanted to go to his family's during the holidays, not have to worry about going to a concert or going out to dinner or whatever he wanted to do, because he's managing his staff in such a way and has it laid out that, crisis happens and accidents happen, but for the most part, he's got it fairly dialed in to the point where he can depend on what he's designed with, of course, the supports, that we were able to provide him in that journey. So it was, a great process and, and well worth the time. And we were happy to do it. So yeah, thank you, Tim.
In my PCP meeting, Judy mentioned something that I haven't thought about. Josh has natural support in case there is an emergency besides his family. Last week, my staff and I trained my friend and his wife on how to help me, just in case I can't get any of my staff to cover. I know my friend from the gym, and even though we don't work out at the same gym anymore, we always kept in touch. When I asked Bill and Cindy if they wanted to be my emergency backup, they did not hesitate to learn how to help me, just in case I'm in a jam. They live less than 15 minutes away from me, and now they know how to help me. Now that my friends know how easy it is to help me, we are going to do a lot more fun stuff together because we always shared a common interest of going fast. Throughout my process of my self-determination, I've learned more than I should have. If you asked me just a year ago, I would have told you something else, that I was happy with my life under the broken system because I didn't know that I was eating meatloaf every night with ketchup. My mind shifted quickly as I lost control of my life due to the agency and getting so many random people to help me. I was fed up and tired with the lack of attention that I was getting from the agency, and for a brief moment, I almost thought about switching to another agency again. When my local advisory committee started offering coaching services early this year, I took a chance and I started in April, and that is where I was eager to take control of my life. Under the traditional system, I had more freedom living with my family because my parents treated me as a grown adult when I was going to college. They never asked me where I was going when my friends came over to help me to go out. That all changed when I entered into supported living and moved out from my parents. The agencies were restricting me on what I could do and what I couldn't do. I needed to ask permission, not from my parents, but from someone else at the office, if my staff could take me to a concert, family events, or even to my doctor's appointments. One agency had the nerve of limiting staff driving me around in my own vehicle to a 5-mile radius from my house. Over the years, I had many highs and lows. I've accomplished a lot, more than I can remember, but at least once a year, I would have a fallout from the agencies because they would implement new policies for no reason. It was like clockwork. The crisis always came from the agencies and not from me. Since I started self-determination, I went to Santa Barbara for a day because my friend wanted to see me at his company's function. I just needed to ask one of my employees and we went. I work out every day because I have the same people helping me on their normal shift. I'm in the gym for at least a 2-hour session, 4 to 6 times a week. I've always enjoyed working out and meeting my friends in the gym. In the past, I couldn't have a set gym schedule because of staffing. I eat like a linebacker or more. My food bill is the largest expense that I have every month. Since I can interview my own people, one of the questions that I ask them is if they can cook. I'm not eating any processed foods anymore, unless I want to. Ever since I started my self-determination, I've been meeting up with friends that I haven't seen in a long time. This would have been a hassle if I was still with an agency. I'm not saying that my life is fine and dandy all of a sudden, because there have been a few scheduling conflicts with my staff. But it's nothing out of proportion, because unlike agencies that have over 100 cases or more, my lead staff has my best interest, and together we figure it out. There is no longer approval needed from a supervisor or a boss, because I am in charge now, and more importantly, no more daily notes. Thank you, Sunny, Victor, Kendra, Deborah, and Judy for helping me start my self-determination. I'm always learning from the best.
Thank you, Tim. I don't want to interrupt, but is your presentation over? Oh, wonderful. That was amazing. I'm giving a big round of applause. That was incredible. I don't want anyone to think, I know that it looks like it's complicated, and it can be, but Tim has help. Tim used this great team. These teams exist all over the state of California. There are lots of people here who can provide you with that help. You can come to our SDP Connect and get help. And we can work through any of your issues. And not everybody has the same issues. Everybody has different challenges, and everybody has different opportunities. My son's in the self-determination program. He's a friend of Tim's, but he has a completely different spending plan and a completely different program, because he still lives with me and his dad. And so, I don't want you ever to look at Tim and say, okay, I want Tim's life, because that's Tim's life. I've had parents say to me, what program is your son in? And it's like, my program's not, my son's in the self-determination program, but he just has his life every day. We don't send him to an agency. He decides every day what he wants to do and who he wants to be with. So thank you, Tim and Tim's team, for just an amazing presentation. They are here to answer any questions you may have. You can do it in various ways. You can do it through the chat, and we will collect those questions and ask them directly. As you know, Tim types to communicate using his toe on an iPad at the base of his wheelchair. So if we get a question directly for Tim, we'll probably give him a minute or two to answer the question before replying to you. You can also ask questions of Tim and his team directly by going down to your reactions at the bottom of your screen and clicking on raise hand, and I'm happy to call on you and ask you to unmute. So right now, just looking at the chat, was there anything in the chat that struck you, Ed, to ask them?
I have not received any questions yet other than does Aviana have a waiting list?
Yeah, I was going to type it, but I can just let everybody know. So we currently, I don't know if you'd call it a waiting list as much as, yeah, I guess it's a waiting list in that I believe, and Olivia's on here. And before I answer that question real quick, something that was bothering me is I'm up here trying to, pretend like I'm taking all this credit and stuff. And, obviously I'm influence policy, I'm helping and I'm driving, initiatives and pushing things through for our services and stuff. And then for Tim, I took a personal interest, but the bulk of the work was done by Olivia Gonzalez at Aviana in our office and her team. And they're phenomenal. We're really blessed to have her and the people that work with her. So I just wanted to make sure we're clear on that. I'm not here to take their credit. I'm just here to kind of help answer some questions and be, support and a friend to Tim. But that's really where the rubber met the road. And Tim will verify that because I told him that they're a lot smarter than me and he agreed. So I guess that's about right. As far as if we have a waiting list, yeah, as of right now we do. So what had happened was, you may or may not be aware, there's a couple of agencies, FMSs that shut down. There was an influx of clients that were already receiving services that are trying to find clients throughout, or trying to find FMSs throughout the state. That's one thing. And then, one of the other things is, honestly, it's been a challenge trying from an FMS perspective, trying to get people started because we have to meet them where they are. But, sometimes there are barriers and challenges to even just getting them up and running to the point where, we want to provide the best possible service we can to each person on an individual and person-centered basis. So in doing that, that takes time. And to be quite honest, the amount of time that we have to invest to get every single case up is something that maybe wasn't exactly, thought of, 6 and 7 years ago when we were doing this. We thought that there would be a little bit more structure to the system and a little bit more assistance to be able to get people kind of up and running so that by the time they made it to the FMS, then we could validate the numbers, help with the spending plan, balance everything, and then make sure that all of the accounting piece was in place with the regional centers and to get everything up and running. But to date, that hasn't really happened yet. So we have a waiting list. I believe that's pushed back to February, I want to say, but don't quote me on that. If you, I'll drop some contact information into the chat. You're always more than welcome to shoot us an email or give us a call. And again, and probably Olivia and her team would give you very detailed information about, where we are as far as a list. If there is a waiting list, quote unquote, or rather, let's go ahead and get you into the pipeline so that we can, get you up and running. Because what a lot of people may not realize is there's certain things that you probably could already be doing to get yourself prepared to go into self-determination that you don't have to wait for us to tell you. So if you wait for 2 months and you say, hey guys, okay, it's my turn or whatever, we're like, great, did you do this, 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 and this, and this? And you're like, oh, I didn't know I needed to do that. That's stuff you could be doing right now so that by the time you actually get to us, you've got that structure in place. And then we're at a point where we're like, great, let's jump into it. Let's get you up and running. We'll balance everything, dial it in on the regional center side, make sure accounting's done, and then boom, we can go ahead and get you started. So I'll put some contact information in there for you.
Thank you so much. And I have said it here at SDP Connect. So for those of you who've never been to this before, I remain gravely concerned about the fact that 2 FMSs have left the state of California in the last 2 months. I am gravely concerned that Aviana has a wait list. I am gravely concerned that the FMSs are not getting what they need to be able to provide this incredible support. We have to remember that you cannot be in the self-determination program without an FMS. You can forego an independent facilitator, although I don't recommend it. You can decide you don't need any help with anything else, or that you can handle your whole self-determination program on your own. But the one thing you must have is the FMS. So that will be another topic for another day that we will worry about that. But I just want to express everyone that if you are going to your local advisory committee meetings at your regional center, if you have any contact with the Department of Developmental Services in any way, even if you're talking to your legislators, you need to tell them that this program will not work unless the FMSs are getting paid in time and in in an amount that keeps them in business. And I'm very, very concerned. So somebody asked which FMS is left. Public partnerships was the most recent one to leave. And the other one was ARC Center. Oh, go ahead, Tim, go for it.
Sunny and Deborah, should we go more in depth on my spending plan? You know me, I'm not shy at all of sharing.
Absolutely, we can do that, Tim, but there's like 10 questions that just went into the chat, which I'd love you to answer, or at least spend some time answering. And a lot of them are about the same thing, which is the pain that we all experience, that all service providers experience, and those of us in the self-determination program. And that is, where do you find staff? Where did you advertise? How do you find them? Where do you go? How do you make sure that they understand that people, that the person comes first, they are the boss, all those kinds of things related to hiring, retaining, and managing staff. So if you could start answering that question, Tim, and then maybe while we're waiting, I just saw another question come in, Ed, that's asking, which I can try to answer, and so can Victor, which is, can you vendor your own FMS? You cannot vendor your own FMS. There's a list of FMSs that are on your regional center and also DDS's website. DDS is the state agency, the Department of Developmental Services. It's on their website, and you can only choose from among those. In some cases, some regional centers have very few left, that maybe they only were contracting with 5, and now 2 of them have left and 1 has a wait list. I'm not really sure about any of the other FMSs and how they're doing, and whether they have wait lists themselves, but I actually think I'll reach out about it. So any advice for people, Victor, on getting an FMS?
Yeah, just, reach out, email, phone call, and do it sooner rather than later. And, ask, hey, great, here's where I'm at now. Or I just learned about the self-determination thing. What do I need to do? And then, we can get you pointed in the right direction on, what steps that you need to do. I mean, we have, actual checklists to help you, to guide you to, hey, I know if I'm doing this, then I'm moving through the path, where it's really just a whole path to get you started. I know Sunny and her team have a similar list, and where it just basically helps to walk you down the path of getting into self-determination. And we share those things willingly, use this, don't use this, it doesn't really matter. We just want to get people in at the end of the day, because it's taking way too long, and it's been, such kind of a pain to get that done. And I was just corrected by Olivia, because she's awesome, that we don't have a waiting list actually, but we did close the month of January for January starts is what it was. So now we would be moving on to February starts. And that's really more of a function of, it's already December 15th. So I stand corrected. Thank you, Olivia. And she's going to drop that into the chat, by the way. So thank you.
Wonderful. Tim, let me know when you're ready. Ready? Okay, go for it.
I found staff through my network of people, but I also reached out to staff that helped me before, because they already knew before the pandemic that I wanted to go into self-determination. Ironically, finding staff to help me was the easiest part of the entire process.
I wish that we could say that for everybody. I know that there's something about you, Tim, that you make friends among your staff and you keep in contact with them. And I think one of the things we always need to know is that the staff become part of our family, but they still work for us, right? Mm-hmm. And so you need to treat your staff well, so that you can go back to staff from years prior and try to bring them in. And so, I can just say that if you advertise for staff on Indeed.com or all those other places, it's just a rough road out there. I would suggest, honestly, that, although I have a staff that we got through Indeed.com who's great, so it can happen, but I need you to know that I advertised for weeks and we had 10 applications, only one of which was qualified, and that happened to be the one who took the job. So we literally had a choice of one. So it's not, and that was before the pandemic. It's even worse now. So a couple of suggestions for folks is if you live near a university or a community college or any kind of higher level place of learning, that you advertise there, because a lot of times students want to have certain hours. They don't necessarily want a full-time job, but maybe they can do some overnights, they can do some hours here or there. And students are really great because they can be a peer to you as well. So I highly recommend that as an alternative way to find staff. The one thing you shouldn't be doing is, a lot of parents call me and say, do you know anybody who can work with my kid? And I'm like, no, like that, if I knew them, they'd be working for mine. So, just staying within our little world is not going to help you. You need to create new people in our field. So do we
have so many questions, Judy.
Excellent. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah. So I have a question from Carrie that I think anyone might be able to take. I'm exactly like Tim. How do I join the self-determination program?
So I don't know, Sunny and Deborah and Victor, if while Tim is typing out his response, if you want to say, what should you do right at the beginning?
Sure. So I think this is probably what Tim is going to say too, is find an independent facilitator. And as an independent facilitator, maybe it's a weird thing for me to say that, but I think having someone who can help you look at the steps that you need to take and figure out your goals and what you want to do, and what you want to do in self-determination and where you are today is really helpful. Generally, we always start with person-centered planning, but sometimes we realize when talking to a person that there are things that they can even start working on before we even begin person-centered planning, things in the traditional system or things that they could get set up sort of in other parts of their lives that will help them. And so I think starting with an independent facilitator that is experienced and has maybe worked with someone in a similar life situation, for me, I think that would be the best place to start. And learning as much as you can, like being here is awesome.
Yeah, that's a great point. And again, like Sunny's got this documented, we've got it documented at this point. Like we can give you, collateral, paperwork, guides to help you guide yourself, down this journey, and not by yourself, but know who do I need to talk to and when to be able to start self-determination. So.
Go ahead, Tim.
I know Carrie personally. She is also being served by a regional center of Orange County. The first thing I recommend you doing is to let your service coordinator know that you want to start the process.
Any other advice anybody has for just getting started? Okay. So sorry.
No, go ahead, Judy.
You're back. Go ahead, Ed.
I am sorry that took less long than I expected.
Okay.
I have a question. I actually have a couple of questions in Spanish. I'm going to ask everyone, please do not post in the chat. I'm posting something in the chat that I need our interpreter, Lorna, to translate for us. So please do not use the chat.
Please turn on your English. If you haven't turned on the English interpretation, please do that right now so you'll be able to hear the English interpretation. Go ahead, Lorna.
And Judy, just a reminder that you'll need to summarize for Helen, our Korean interpreter.
Got it. I'll write it down. So thank you for that. So what this parent asked is for a parent who knows nothing about self-determination, where should they go to get information and who should they ask? You are going to need to go through the orientation at your regional center. However, I really need to tell you that the orientations are not great. They often confuse people more than clarify, but you have to do it anyway. So that's certainly one place to start. You can also start by going to our website and looking at our SDP Connect recordings. They all have different names, and we've done a couple that are called SDP 101. So it's like an introduction to the self-determination program. And so you might want to look at those, because I think we go over the program more quickly and in a more plain language way. And then once you understand the basics and the terms, like what is an independent facilitator, what is a financial management service, what is a spending plan, once you understand that, it really helps you. Another thing you can do, I should really mention and get these out in front of you as I walk away. We have 2 books that we have written and published about the self-determination program that you can find on our website. The first one is called Thinking Outside the Box, and it has a chart in it. And we actually went over that chart in one of our previous SDP Connects that's called Step by Step in the Self-Determination Program. And I think that will really help you. And there's little check boxes to say, did I do this? Did I do that? We have a second book, which is a very short little book called Profiles in Self-Determination. It actually features Tim, and it features 10 people. Well, it features people who have been in the self-determination program for a long time, because they were in the pilot for over 20 years, the pilot project. And then it features 10 people who at the time that this was written in 2019, were moving into the self-determination program, and talks about how they would take their current budget and create a spending plan. So I encourage you, this is really written in basic language, and the other one has some really good forms and some background information. So please feel free to purchase those books on our website. Go ahead, Tim.
This is kind of funny. My parents had no idea what was self-determination was until I kept calling them for emergency. They finally understand what is self-determination when I showed them my draft spending plan and how much I am going to pay my staff from my budget.
That's so great. Tim, did you mention, because I actually had to step away for a second to get my son ready for something, but did you mention when you were talking about your spending plan, how much you spent in the past month and how the costs were lower?
My last month's budget in self-determination was $3,000 less than the agency, and I did everything that I wanted.
So people need to understand that, the agency, the supported living agency that was supporting Tim and supports other people, they have a lot of administrative costs that, while you get that funding in your budget, those costs are not costs that you would necessarily have if you're hiring your own workers. And so, Tim, did you want to share your spending plan for a couple of minutes and go through it rather quickly?
So Deborah.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay.
Hold on just a moment.
So Deborah will share it, and I can kind of walk through it with Tim. Is that all right, Tim? Okay.
And I want to warn everybody that this will look complicated, but it's not like Tim had to do this by himself. He had a support team of independent facilitators and an FMS who made sure that he was following all the rules and the labor laws.
Okay,
So
can you see that?
Yeah. So the way that we worked on this, as Victor was saying, we worked as a team with the FMS and Olivia from Aviana and Tim and us, and we worked together to develop the spending plan. And the place where we started is the conversation that Victor was having, that Victor described, that where they were in a conference room, Victor, and I don't know who else was there, Tim, it was before we were working, or we weren't involved in that, where they came up with the schedule and what Tim wanted his week to look like. And that was really the starting point, because we had to understand before we could put together the spending plan, like, how many staff are we talking about? And are you going to pay everybody the same, or are you going to pay people at night a different rate? And so there were all those questions that you kind of have to understand first in order to do the spending plan. And that was all stuff that Tim did with Victor and the team at Aviana beforehand. And so they
And
had
Olivia, the smart one.
so they had a great outline to start of what that was going to look like. And then we kind of just went in and worked out the details of it. So let's see, this does look very confusing. We've done, between Deborah and our team at Guidelight Group, we've done more than well over 50 of these. And this is the most complicated spending plan that we have worked on. So do not feel like, oh my gosh, I'm totally intimidated. We were intimidated at first too by this spending plan, but it really came together like pretty cleanly, and we're happy with how it is. So basically, most of Tim's spending is in his staff. And so what you can see in that third column, I know it's really little there, but the C column is that we have each staff listed, and that's because he has some staff that are only during the day. So they have one pay rate because he pays people differently during the day and at night. He has some staff that are only at night, so they have only one pay rate, but it's a different pay rate. And then he has some staff that work a 24-hour shift, and so they have day and night pay rates, so different hours at different pay rates for one person. So it was a little bit complicated, and so we made each staff person their own row for each of the pay rates that they had. And this is a template that Aviana has. We have one that we use at Guidelight Group as well. And so that's where we started, is just entering in each of the different staff and their pay rates and how many hours each one was going to work. And so from there, the other piece is the employer burden, and the sick time is calculated automatically through a formula in this template. So we really just needed to know how many different staff there were and how many different pay rates they each had, and what those pay rates were, how many hours each staff would be working, each pay rate or each part of their job in a given week. And we could plug that information in and get the total for each staff. Then at the bottom, we had, this was sort of an interesting one. Tim wanted to pay his staff a little bit extra if they were working a shift that they were called in for with less than 24 hours notice. So he sort of wanted to incentivize people to pick up last minute shifts if he was in a bind. And so we added some additional funds. I won't get into how we did the math of that, but we added some additional funds so that he would be able to do that there. And then we also added in additional funds for overtime pay. Overtime pay would be time and a half. So we had to calculate approximately how many hours this might happen. I mean, it was sort of an educated guess, and we put money for that. And then we there was a little bit of money left over at the end of his spending plan, and we put that in there for like just in case money. We don't know, something might happen with staff, he might need it, there's a little bit left, we're just going to put it there. So that's the bulk of Tim's spending plan. But we did also, he does also have other goals, and so we put some money for the other goals too. Employment supports, Tim has talked about today, his goal is, of being self-employed and being paid as a speaker. And in his person-centered plan, there were all different types of ideas of things he could do with that, and consultants he could hire. So we set aside some funds for that in his plan. Independent facilitation is in there, his gym membership, and then some technology needs as well. So this was a really collaborative effort with Tim and Aviana and us. And I know it might seem really complicated, but Tim, we kind of thought, well, let's just show it and see, give people a glimpse of what that might look like.
Gee, Sonny, this brings back memories of my dreams, but it's totally easy now. Looking back, it's totally easy to understand. I would do it again and again. Thank you, Sonny and Deborah and Olivia, for your crazy math.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, people were asking if there is a template like this that can be shared, and I think that this is a template. Was this a template from Aviana, or was this a template from Guidelight Group?
This one is from Aviana, but I know
Okay.
Guidelight has one as well. Since we started working in this one, like rather than try to strip things out and read
Got it.
things, we're like, you know what, let's just keep it in one spot, move forward with it, and then just build it out from here.
Right.
But you can go either way with it. Yeah.
So as far as sharing a template, I mean, in the orientation, they actually have a little template. It's not great, but if you hire a person-centered planner or an independent facilitator to help transition you into the program, and when you hire an FMS, both of them should have templates. Basically, if you are hiring an independent facilitator that doesn't have a template for your spending plan, find a different independent facilitator. Okay. I mean, as you're interviewing people, ask them to see their blank template. And if they say, oh, I don't use it, then just say, okay, I'll keep looking. Okay. Because this is the basic thing that they're supposed to be doing for you. Because you have to make sure that you're getting all those little details, but you don't have to do it yourself. They'll do it for you. I know I don't want to freak out Deanna Ugaldi right now, because she's coming in very soon, Tim, Jen, and you're going to be her advisor. So I don't want to freak her out. We'll get you the support you need, Deanna. I'll be on your team too. And then we'll do it. And then once you're in, Deanna, we'll do a whole SDP Connect of Deanna's life. So that will be great. So other questions that we missed? Okay, great.
We have a couple. I have a question from Heidi. In the self-determination program, can I allow for overtime, vacation pay, and sick pay for any she says any privates? I think she might mean people that she pays privately.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you're in charge. So you can definitely put all that stuff in there. You saw Tim had already allocated money for those sorts of things as well. So California, by the way, already has a paid sick leave law on the books. So without diving back into the crazy template, but we have a column for that where it gets calculated and added in automatically anyway, because in the state of California, the minimum that, if you're going to work 30 to 40 hours a week, or even 25 hours a week, you're going to end up accruing 1 hour for every 30 hours you work per California state law. So you'll get up to 48 hours that you can save during a year, but you can use 24 of those. Now, depending on the city that you're working in, there may be different laws that even supersede that, where you could end up with 48 hours maybe that you would be able to use for paid sick leave. But there are paid sick leaves already on the books. And if you want to augment that or add more to that, you're more than welcome to do that within your plan as well. And yeah, you can go ahead and build all that stuff in.
But you don't need to know that information.
Yeah.
The FMS knows that information, and
Right.
your independent facilitator should help you work with your FMS to do what you want to do. So do not be intimidated, like, oh my God, I don't know the sick leave laws. Don't worry about it. It's not your job to know it. There are other people who know it that are going to help you out when you get to that point. So just take it one step at a time.
Thank you, Sunny.
That was great. So Ed, can we make this next one the last question so we end exactly at 6?
Absolutely. And once more, I'm going to ask folks, please don't put anything in the chat, because once again, this is a question in Spanish that we will need translated from by our interpreter, Lorna. So again, I've put it in the chat. Nobody please post in the chat, please and thank you.
Let me just repeat that so that the Korean interpreter can interpret it. She said, I am already in the self-determination program. If I were to choose Aviana, how long would it take for me to get my spending plan and everything set up?
So I'll first do it in Spanish and then I'll tell everybody what we said. So depende dónde está en su plano, entonces dónde está en el proceso a entrar en autodeterminación. Entonces, la primera cosa que tiene que hacer es habla con Olivia o alguien de su equipo de dónde está en su presupuesto con el centro regional, si ya sabe cuánto dinero tiene para su presupuesto, y luego vamos a darle su información que necesita a entrar y a procesar con la lista y todos esos alimentos de que necesita. Y también vamos a entrar otra vez el correo electrónico de Olivia aquí en el chat y le puede contactar. So I just let her know that it really depends on where she is in the whole process and that we're going to meet her where she is in the process and then kind of point her in the right direction to let her know like, hey, we can give you the list. You can make sure to see where you are in that because she talks about, her budget and where she is with her budget, but without getting more details, obviously we don't know exactly. Did she get the exact budget amount from the regional center, in which case then has she done a PCP and then a spending plan, which sort of be the next logical steps, right? So really, we're going to give her the contact information, have her reach out, and then we can point in the right direction. And then Sunny, if you want to put your contact information in there too, I know you have Spanish speaking team members, I believe, as well.
And Tim has his foot up. Go ahead, Tim.
To make it clear to everyone, before I went with Aviana, I pretty much met with every FMS before choosing Aviana.
Yeah, that's really important to hear. So even though Tim had a friendship with Victor, he still interviewed other people and looked to see what was the right model. Remember, there's a couple of different models if you have staff, and made the decision for himself. So just on the final note, Tim, in the chat, Pam is saying you are an amazing storyteller, Tim. You are going to do really well and educate so many people doing public speaking. Be sure to use social media to keep us informed of where to find you presenting. Yeah, we got to get you up and going on Instagram and TikTok, Tim. Not that I know how to do that, but well, I want to spend a minute just thanking everybody for our 2021. Boy, DVU has had quite a year in 2021. We have really expanded a great deal. We have another job opening, everybody. We have a program assistant position available. If any of you are interested, please email me and I can send you the job announcement or get on our mailing list because we certainly promote it. We have so much in store for 2022, folks. More self-determination. We're doing leadership trainings. We're doing, we have a bill on conservatorship reform. We have fair hearing reform. Oh my God, I'm so tired. And I'm just thinking about the future. So we are really, really excited. We're building a disability rights movement in the state. We hope you will join us. I want to thank Tim. I want to thank Deborah and Sunny and Victor and Kendra for the great presentation today. Thank you to our incredible interpreters, Lorna and Helen, who have been with us this year. And thanks to all of you for a wonderful year of self-determination. And here's to 2022, when we will fix the self-determination program and make it accessible for all. Thanks, everybody. Have a beautiful holiday. Happy New Year. We will see you next time on January 5th. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.